Hey guys, welcome back. It's Kevin and Ali, and today we actually have new friends that actually join us and will be joining us for the rest of the videos. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Hey, I'm Calvin. This is my first first time at camp, and I'm super excited to join y'all.
Hey, I'm Mickey, and this is my 4th summer here out at camp.
Hey everyone, I'm Hannah. I've been a volunteer for about 7 years before now, and I'm excited to be a counselor for the first time this summer.
Awesome, and we're really excited to share this content with our friends, with you guys. I know that last episode we actually shared with you guys parts of exposing what's going to be inside the book of Psalms, and one of those things were journaling.
So we were talking a lot last week about the heart and how God looks at our heart. And so today we wanted to talk about different methods that we have to express ourselves to God. The written word, the spoken word is really important. You see a lot of different examples of, you think of the parables that Jesus told, or you think of Proverbs and the sayings that people could share to each other to share wisdom. Well, in Psalms, you see what looks a lot like journaling. You see people calling out to God, venting about their problems or exclaiming their joys, talking about their daily life, what they're going through, so they're reflecting on it, they're being honest, they're talking about it, they're talking about how they feel, and then they give space to God to respond, or they think about, well, what has God already told me? What do I know of God's truth? And then they speak that back into their life, and then at the end of it, a lot of these psalms were used as worship. They were put to music, they were memorized and repeated, they were passed down. And so today we're going to give a lot of different examples of how you can journal, different methods.
So I think the most basic raw form of self-expression in journaling would be what is called a stream of consciousness, and that's like when you're experiencing all these emotions and feelings, and you feel like you just got to get them all down, and that's something that I've done from time to time. And or you can do it in a more organized way, like a list or bullet points. Oftentimes I find myself writing a title about, this is what situation I'm in, and having a list like, this is what God's doing in this situation.
Mickey, talking about titles, there's moments where I remind myself, like this phrase comes up, and I write it down in a piece of paper. And sometimes I can tell myself the things that I'm writing to motivate myself, but I feel like it's more interesting whenever I decide to sing that to me, because it's like a melody sticking to it, and then once that melody gets stuck in my head, like the moment I actually need to remind myself, I hear the music in my mind, and then I start singing out to myself what I had written in my journal. I don't know if maybe Hannah has experienced this.
Absolutely. Speaking of kind of music and poetry is something I do a lot with my creative journaling, kind of. I'll just write down whatever I'm thinking in kind of a poetic way, and that just helps me to express my creativity. And then going along with that, I'll do some sketches or doodles, and that just helps me put some imagery to my thoughts and kind of organize through everything. And also I think doodling can help you de-stress sometimes. It's just kind of a fun little activity, and all of that can just help you organize your thoughts and have fun while doing it. So.
Wow. Yeah. Real quick, just on that, it reminded me of something, just a quick example of it. Like if I were to start humming the song, what do you guys think of when I do this? Dun, 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 dun. What does it make you think?
Tiger.
The
Tiger, right? But then afterwards,
like motivating you, you want to run.
Do you want to exercise, or do you want to go lay down?
Exercise.
You see, just imagine the power of music. The moment when you start adding a melody to what you're declaring, like it motivates you to do something.
So sometimes when you're journaling, you may not have a whole lot of time to journal, and you may just want to make it real simple and concise. You may not have the emotional bandwidth to really just pour out your heart and analyze your thoughts on a page. So one thing that I found very helpful is just make a really short mantra or meditation phrase. Maybe it's even a simple word, maybe like help, or sometimes it's as simple as, God, give me wisdom. And it's something that really short, maybe one word or one short sentence, and you can repeat it throughout the day silently in your head anytime you feel like you need to. If you do have more time to journal, and you can you can really pour out your heart on the page and just write out what you want to, what you feel like you need to get off your chest. And then, some of those, sometimes you may feel emotions that are really raw. When I say raw, I mean like, jealousy or anger, or just some of those other really hard emotions. They're not always the prettiest. You don't always like to see those things. And when I journal those, I like to put a squiggly bracket on the around those. Then I can look at that emotion or that thought that I had, and then revisit it and say, is this the most helpful way to understand this? Is there a more helpful way? And I can put the most helpful in square brackets, and that delineates the difference between raw emotions and maybe a higher order thinking.
I like that.
So going off of that a little bit, I like to do a similar thing with symbols. He uses the brackets to differentiate, and I use some symbols and kind of going along with the doodles, just little drawings or little stars or something. And that helps me kind of organize my thoughts. You can make a little key, and it makes it kind of fun, and you can go and find stuff. If you remember something and you know that this symbol is beside where it's written, you can go through and find it a lot easier, and that can be helpful whenever you're trying to look back at a time when you were having a hard time and you want to remember how you got through it and how God was there for you. So I think that symbols are really cool to use for that type of thing and really useful.
Well, that's awesome. Isn't it wonderful the ways that we can definitely connect ourselves in journaling with God? Like, just hearing every single one of you guys, the different ways of expressing ourselves and finding the simplicity of all of this. But you know what? I really want to take the time to let's just go deep into personal questions, so that way we can give the chance for our audience to connect with us, to actually see that we're real, we're pretty raw, and we're made out of flesh and bone just like you guys, and that you don't have to be perfect in order for you to start doing something like this. It's not something that's obligatory for you to have a relationship with God, but it's also a way that if you can relate to it, you're more than welcome to try it out. So why don't we start with a question with Calvin. So Calvin, how long have you been journaling, and what benefits have you gotten out of them?
So I started journaling when I was around 16 years old, and I'm 32 now, so that's about half of my life. And journaling to me has been a safe place for me to put my thoughts and emotions, just give them just full reign of the page. And there's nobody else there's no one else that's going to be looking at that journal. And journaling has allowed me to build a conceptual framework for me to understand myself and the world around me. And I encourage you to keep your journals, even for years, because you can go back, like I have. I've gone back to earlier journal entries, and I can remember what I was going through at that particular time in life, and that's really helpful. So definitely start journaling and keep your journals.
Sweet, great advice. So talking about advice, Hannah, what kind of advice can you also give us about journaling?
So something that I think is really important is making sure that you're not judging yourself too harshly or putting limitations on how you decide to write or the style that you want to write with, or even being consistent with your style. You can literally do whatever you want in there. It's your journal, and you can try every different thing we've talked about. You can make up stuff that we don't even know about, and that's great. I think the important part is just getting on your thoughts and organizing those, and working on those with God, and just kind of helping yourself to get all of that out, and using your own methods. And it doesn't matter if you're not good at writing, just getting it out there and being confident in that.
I love that. I definitely love that. How about you, Mickey?
So, I don't like to be too hard on myself. I sometimes I go back and reread thoughts that I've had. I'm like, what is this? What did I write? And sometimes that's okay, and often other times you can go back and be like, hey, okay, this is how I'm feeling. I'm out of this situation now. What have I learned? Kind of that situation. And oftentimes I kind of find it. I think something I struggle with a lot of the time is kind of having a schedule when it comes to journaling. I think that I try my best to like write down, okay, I'm going to do it this time, and then I just never do it because I'm procrastinating or something like that, or other stuff comes up.
Yeah.
But I think it just takes dedication and realizing that this will bring me closer to the Lord.
Wow.
And so that's something I'm continuing to work on.
Sweet. I can definitely relate with him. So Calvin, you shared with us a while ago how it's like for you it was important to keep these journaling, and you saw a difference between the beginning and now. What are some ways that you have changed your journaling from the moment you started to the moment that you're now?
Absolutely. So when I first started out, when I was 16 and I was just learning to write, I wanted to write like super fancy. I wanted to write just like they did in the Bible, and I had a King James version, so I would use thee and with the double E and the thou and oh Lord, and that's all well and good. It served a purpose, but I don't use any of that flowered language anymore. I try to keep it really simple. In fact, I may use just one word for capturing my emotional state for that entire day. It's a tool for you to use, and so use it as you think is appropriate. There's also been times in my life where I've kind of backed off from journaling so much. And that's okay. I put more emphasis on meditation, but I've recently come back to journaling, and I want you to know, even if you get off track from journaling, it's always a very, very beneficial tool to come back to.
Wow, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, man. Simplicity is the way to go, guys. So Allison, what has been a moment that you've thought to yourself, like, okay, if someone were to read my journal right now, what would you like people to see?
Oof. I feel like the biggest thing they'd see is my ups and downs with God. I feel like my journal does not look consistent. Maybe it's consistent in its inconsistency. Some days I'm venting and just getting everything out, kind of stream of consciousness like Mickey was talking about. And then other days I don't have any words. I'll look back in my journals and realize, wow, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't used a page. What happened? Where did my time go? I think that they'll just see my relationship with God, those moments where I'm drawing near, those moments where I'm pulling back. But the thing that I really liked what Calvin was saying about the language we use, because in a lot of these moments where I feel like I don't have the words to express what I'm feeling, I know that the Spirit intercedes for me. I know that God hears the words of my heart, and that ultimately it's drawing me closer to Him. So I hope that would be, other than like all of the craziness of my life that's in there, I hope if somebody looked at my journal that they could see that I am a friend with God, and that I love God and that He loves me.
Definitely. I think that reminds me of like, this is what God wants. He wants realness. He wants us to show that we have ups and downs, and I'm pretty sure that there's a pretty hard practice into it. So Mickey, how would you help us see what is the hardest part about journaling?
I think sometimes, I think I was talking about kind of going back and rereading your stuff. Sometimes it's just hard to go back and look at it and see what situation you were in. It can be a tough thing, be reminded of this hard time that you're in, but it's good to, sometimes that's a necessary thing, is to go back and look at what you've written and figure out, what have I learned, and how much closer have I grown to the Lord, through this situation, and what can I learn not to do in the future, kind of thing.
I like that. I definitely. Anybody else want to share on that one? What's been a hard part about journaling?
I think the hardest part for me was, like Mickey said, that resonates with me, the looking back. Because because I think we have this sense of needing to be perfect, like this idea of perfection, and to realize that we have our doubts, we have big questions of God. You know, even going back and looking at Psalms and reading it, you feel their pain. They're crying out to God, asking God, where are you? And so I think going back and seeing my mental state or the state of my heart in those moments is both painful and beautiful, because I can definitely see where God has taken me from that, how he's pulled me out of that, or, you know, walked with me through that process and at my pace.
So a quick question. This was not planned on this one, but is journal only for girls?
No.
Okay, so have you guys ever thought of maybe like, why is it just a girl thing? Because if you just see the movies like Hollywood nowadays, they only paint girls doing this thing. Like journaling is only for girls, and they have to lock it up because nobody has to read it. Like, did you guys have any problems with that before?
I never felt a complex about that. But I never called it a diary either. So. Guys don't have a diary, we have a journal. So.
I think journal's more manly term.
Yes.
You know, like,
I like that.
kind of like a satchel, you know, not a purse kind of.
Yeah, and when you buy a journal, or when you have somebody buy a journal,
A pink one.
yeah, don't get the pink ones, don't get the flowery ones, you know.
Unless you
Or-
want it.
Unless
Or you can get one and then they're never going to think it's yours.
It's true.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
So if the guys do buy a journal, what do you think we should give them advice?
You know, I always like just simple color that you like. I really like the leather bound ones.
I think the most important thing about that is that the preconceptions or the expectations of what your faith should look like, you know, don't let what other people say dictate how you communicate with God. And you know, if people are saying, well, that's a girly thing, you say, well, I'm a guy and I journal. So it's no longer a girly thing. You know, just not letting anybody define your relationship with God.
And if you're really unsure about it, tell them to go read Psalms, because most of it is written by
Heck
men.
yeah. I like that. So I definitely like that, because I know that I did struggle with that when I was a lot more younger. And I didn't start journaling till I actually started going to college, because I found out that some friends did it, and I was really nosy, so I started like checking their journals, and I was like, dude, what? This is awesome, and you know how to draw, and this and that. So I started drawing in my journals as well. But isn't it wonderful how many perspectives we can find in the way of journaling? The biggest takeaway that we want you guys to take out of this is that just because it's written one way in the Bible doesn't mean that you guys don't get to live it in the way that God wants you to live it. And one of the things that I've always seen as chapter after chapter after chapter, like the author of every chapter decided to change it up just a bit. They had their own spiciness to it. And this is what God wants us to do in our lives. In order for us to gain and have this relationship with God, is constantly giving ourselves the moments of grace that He's giving us. It's okay to have moments of loneliness. It's okay to have moments of failures. And you can definitely develop this relationship by writing it down, by drawing it down, by making noodles. Was it noodling? Noodling. Doodling. Sorry, guys. And apparently I don't doodle. If I would have done it, I would have said it right. But there's different ways. And we don't say this by forcing you and telling you that this is the only way. No, this is one of the ways, you know? And this is what we wanted to open up to you guys today. And I hope that this has encouraged you guys to find out a little bit more about journaling, because there's a lot more perspective in the world about this. And this is what we got for you guys.
Yeah, so if you have your own method that we didn't mention today, we'd love for y'all to talk about it in the comments. Share your own personal experience with journaling, what works for you, what doesn't. Ask questions and answer each other. You know, this isn't just our conversation. We want to open it up to y'all too. So that's our prayer, that you start writing down your conversation with yourself and offering that up to God. Give Him space to speak into your life too.
Make sure you subscribe and keep following us and sharing the content that we're uploading, and you'll be seeing more of our faces throughout the series.
We love y'all, and we'll see you next week.
God bless you guys.
Bye.